Part 12. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 111. One of the major tasks of the search team in exploring the ruins is to bring back the survivors who survived in the ruins. Ordinary people will be arranged to live in temporary accommodation, and awakened people will be invited to join many search teams to expand their manpower. Most of these awakened people who have been wandering in the ruins for several years are powerful and have certain combat experience, so they are also good at joining the search team. Wei Linger walked in front, and Mu Qiu followed behind, listening to the girl's sweet voice with a smile on his face. But some new awakened people will appear in the base from time to time, but most of these awakened people are young, mostly children, and they can't use their powers flexibly, and most of them have no combat experience. At this time, we need high-level awakeners to help these children quickly master their powers and replenish Yuhei's strength. Some awakeners who stay in the base will also take time to accept such tasks of training newcomers, which can ensure safety and earn some extra money. Wei Linger's explanation made Mu Qiu understand a little. When he first joined the base, he was identified as a B-level awakener. This level of strength is not weak even in the search team, so he joined the search team without any training. But those children who have just awakened their powers have no combat experience. They have nothing but powers and can only become food for zombies. At this time, some senior awakeners are needed to guide them, which is also a kind of alternative crash training in this time-sensitive apocalypse. Xiao Hanyan meant that she would play the role of a teacher in Yuhei to guide and train these emerging awakeners, protecting herself while injecting new blood into Yuhei. Well, make the best use of everything. It must be said that Xiao Hanyan is really business-minded. Of course, Mu Qiu did not dislike this behavior. After all, it was essentially to protect him, and he was also very interested in teaching students, something he had never experienced before. You are so confident in handing the children to me. Aren't you afraid that I will teach them badly? Mu Qiu said half-jokingly. How bad can you teach them? Wei Linger replied with a smile. Obviously she was quite confident in Mu Qiu's character. After that, Wei Linger's face darkened. Besides, the situation of those children. What's wrong? Mu Qiu suddenly had an inexplicable premonition. Those children are special, you will know later. Wei Linger did not answer directly, but left Mu Qiu in suspense. Mu Qiu rubbed his chin. It seemed that the students assigned to him did not seem simple. Wei Linger took Mu Qiu to a familiar building. This is... Mu Qiu looked around for a moment. Wasn't this the stadium where he had been given the Awakener test? However, the stadium seemed particularly deserted today. Only a few teams could be seen in the huge venue. Wei Linger walked to one of the high platforms in the stadium and slowly pressed a button. Then, Mu Qiu felt a shake under his feet. There was a mechanism on the high platform that turned, and the originally stable high platform instantly turned into an elevator, and a transparent bulletproof glass cover rose around it. I didn't expect that this seemingly simple stadium could hide such a mystery. When the elevator sank to the bottom, a wider space appeared in front of Mu Qiu. The material of the surrounding walls was some kind of reinforced steel armor, and it felt difficult to penetrate even a steel bullet. The whole space looked even more technological, with a wide passage in the middle. In the center, there was a central device for connecting to the main control, and the surround screen on it monitored the slightest movement in the entire space. The ceiling was a whole piece of solar panels, which illuminated the wide space of the main film, and the two sides of the passage were divided into independent training grounds by steel plates. What is this? Looking at the large space in front of him with a strong sense of technology, Mu Qiu was also a little surprised. This place looked very much like the headquarters of a battle base in some science fiction movies. Seeing Mu Qiu showing such a surprised expression, Wei Linger hummed. This is the high-tech training base built by Yuhei in cooperation with another high-tech base called Zilan. Some of the devices inside can help awakeners improve their training methods and quickly adapt to their own abilities. Zilan base. Mu suddenly became curious about this high-tech base. From the space storage group at the beginning, to the laser sword in Ji Yufeng's hand, to the high-tech training ground now, this high-tech base called Zilan really aroused Mu's interest. Apart from this high-tech training base, the space storage group containing the mysteries of time and space and the laser sword in Ji Yufeng's hand that cuts through everything are not something that humans can do in just 2 years of scientific and technological research. The facilities of this training base have not been fully constructed yet. Ordinary awakeners need to pay a certain amount of merit points to practice here. But there are no such strict requirements for those new awakeners who are receiving training. Wei Linger took Mu through several passages and came to one of the training spaces. On the stands of this space of more than 100 square meters, a 15 or 16-year-old girl with long black hair was sitting there. The girl was beautiful, with smooth black hair that fell to her waist. She was a petite beauty in her prime, about to bloom. When Mu and the others walked in, the girl with long black hair was holding a book in her hands, reading with her head down. At first glance, she had the temperament of a lady from a noble family. The girl looked up and saw Wei Linger coming with Mu. She closed the book, stood up and walked in front of the two of them, saying in a cold voice, "Sister Wei." Obviously, the age of 16 is the most lively stage for such girls, but the girl with long black hair in front of her seemed to have no vitality at all, and her eyes were as quiet as a pool of dead water. If Xiao Hanyan's coldness seemed like a snow lotus blooming proudly on the plateau, then the girl with long black hair in front of her seemed like a withered platycodon flower beside a dry pond. Wei Linger smiled at the girl. "Qianya, you are here so soon." "Yeah," the girl with long black hair answered softly, and there was still no emotion in her voice. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo Xianyu. Chapter 112. Funeral. The first impression this girl with long, straight black hair gave to Mu was a sense of frustration for no apparent reason. It's not ordinary depression, but an inexplicable sadness and silence, like a puddle of calm stagnant water. Introduction: this is Qianya, one of your future students. Wei Linger first introduced the dark, straight girl in front of her to Mu, and as expected, she was actually handed over to one of Mu's students. "Qianya, this is your teacher Mu." Looking at the entire Yuhei base, he is also a rare strong person, and he is also a rare elemental awakener. I believe that with his guidance, you will be able to start teaching soon. Wei Linger said this in a firm tone, clearly trusting Mu. But the girl with long black hair and straight hair named Qianya just said and bowed slightly to Mu. "Teacher." Although the tone was not respectful, it was well-mannered, and the girl always looked cold and paralyzed, so there was nothing objectionable about it. Mu nodded with a smile. After a simple greeting, Qianya sat back in the stands, picked up the book and started reading. Wei Linger smiled awkwardly at Mu. "Don't mind, Qianya's appearance is related to her superpower." Before he finished speaking, two figures, one large and one small, walked towards them not far away. One of the women was in her 20s, wearing round glasses and shoulder-length short hair. She had a beautiful face and was holding a delicate little hand. The owner of these delicate little hands was wearing an embroidered short skirt and looked pretty, with a palm-sized hamster on his shoulders. And the most important thing is that he actually knows this person Mu. Su Wen. The petite figure walking towards them was none other than the little Lolita Su Wen who was in Wei Linger's team. "Sister Linger, brother Chu." The short-haired woman came holding Su Wen. Su Wen greeted Wei Linger and Mu happily. The moment she saw Su Wen, Mu turned to look at Wei Linger, her mouth twitched and said, "I said, no." Wei Linger nodded meaningfully, ran forward and hugged the short-haired woman and teased, "You're here too, M." The short-haired woman named Yu smiled and replied, Wen is finally going to have a teacher. Why don't I come over to take a look? Wei Ling turned around and introduced to Mu Qiu, this beautiful sister is also a teacher at the training base, named Ji Yu. You have known Su Wen for a long time, and Su Wen will also be trained by you now. Wei Ling stuck out her tongue. She had known about this for a long time but never explained it to Mu Qiu. Mu Qiu was not surprised by what happened to Su Wen, but turned to look at the short-haired woman named Ji Yu. Isn't the surname Ji rare? Combined with the round frame glasses Ji Yu wore on her face, Mu Qiu had a guess in her mind. Sure enough, Wei Ling said the next second, yes, Yu's brother is the famous law enforcement team leader in Yuhe, the white god of death Ji Yufeng. Is myopia a genetic trait in your family? Suddenly, Mu Qiu said something coldly that silenced the entire audience. No one expected Mu Qiu's brain circuit to be so strange. The first thing to question was not the relationship between Ji Yufeng and Ji Yu, but something as trivial as glasses. After a long while, Ji Yu realized what she was doing, and pulled out a slightly forced smile. You are the Mu Qiu that Ling said, right? It's just as Ling said, not only are you powerful, but you also have such a way of speaking. Unique. Ji Yu made a relatively fair comment. Mu Qiu turned to look at Su Wen and said with a smile, I didn't expect to meet again so soon, Wen. Somehow, after seeing Su Wen, Mu Qiu remembered the embarrassing scene when Su Wen exposed him after transforming into Shura in Lannan City. Mu Qiu bent down, rubbed Su Wen's little head, shook her fingers and said with a smile. This time I will be your teacher. Be careful that I won't let you offend. Su Wen nodded and said with a firm look in her eyes, I will definitely work hard. While several people were talking, there was a rush of footsteps not far away. Everyone turned to look and saw a teenage boy with short hair running hurriedly at the entrance of the passage, panting heavily in front of everyone. The only thing Mu Qiu looked at was that this boy was wearing a simple shirt and shorts, with an ordinary face. The only bright spot might be his reddish hair. At first glance, the young man looked ordinary, just like an idle delinquent before the end of the world, but there was a faint aura about him that caught Mu Qiu's attention. Sorry, I was a little late just now because I was helping an old lady cross the street. The red-haired boy wiped the sweat from his forehead matter-of-factly, looking out of breath. Wei Ling heard the young man's explanation and said angrily, Don't do this, I've heard similar excuses more than a dozen times. Then he introduced to Mu Qiu, he is your last student. His name is Lin Feng. He is very cunning. Although he only has D-level strength now, his superpowers are very powerful. His superpowers are very powerful. Energy comes from. I know. With a warm smile on her face, Mu Qiu stepped forward and touched Lin Feng's red hair. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he smiled like a spring breeze. His superpower comes from the Fire Lord. At the same time, in another high-rise office in Yuhe, the chubby and pot-bellied businessman Zhang Qinggui was sitting on some unknown animal skin chair, talking to his subordinates in front of him. I can't believe that Mu Qiu is actually a twin superpower user. To be able to defeat the S-level shadow, it seems that Xiao Hanyan really got a treasure this time. Zhang Qinggui had a kind smile on his face, and this smile on his face really gave people a sense of compassion like Maitreya in the world. I missed such a treasure with my treasure hunting superpower. Zhang Qinggui narrowed his eyes slightly, holding a string of prayer beads in his hand and muttering. In front of Zhang Qinggui stood a middle-aged man in a suit. The man in the suit reported to Zhang Qinggui, Chairman, Wang Daipen has already made some moves, and it seems that he is targeting Mu Qiu. What do you think we should do? No hurry. Zhang Qinggui stroked the rosary in his hand and slowly closed his eyes. Find an opportunity for Mu Qiu to meet me. If we can attract a twin-powered person with great potential, it will be beneficial to us. It doesn't matter if he doesn't want to stand on our side. After all, we should value peace when doing business. Zhang Qinggui suddenly changed the subject and opened his eyes. Then find an opportunity for him to meet Wang Deipen alone and discuss in detail. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 113. These three are the students assigned to me by the organization. Mu Qiu and Wei Ling stood aside and talked. Not far away were three students with different personalities. Shueqianya, who has a cold temperament like a pool of stagnant water, the cute little lowly Su Wen, and the young boy Lin Feng who has the blood of the Balrog in his body. Mu Qiu had a vague feeling that the task of being a teacher might not be that simple. I can understand the others, but why would Su Wen become my student? Hasn't she already joined your team, M? Moreover, Mu Qiu could feel that after several thrilling life and death battles in Lannan City, Su Wen's superpower level had reached the early B level, and she was just one step away from breaking through to the intermediate level. Although this level is not at the top of the search team, it is still not weak. Wei Ling glanced at Su Wen who was talking to Ji Yu, and explained, Wen Wen's situation is a bit special. You also know her powers. Being close to someone will be fatal, so Wen Wen's powers further development and experience are still needed. Mu Qiu understood that this was like some powerful sea-level awakened beings. Even with low energy, they could leapfrog and strangle enemies with their rich combat experience and aggressive abilities. But Su Wen's ability is to listen to the emotions of all things and communicate with rational creatures to a certain extent. This ability is no less than a magical skill at some special occasions, but if it is placed on her own, even the lowest zombies will have a chance to knock her down. This is like a child holding a weapon but not knowing how to use it. No matter how powerful the power is, it will seem useless. Mu Qiu looked thoughtful, but she heard Wei Ling continue, as for why Wen Wen joined our team, to be precise, she is not a member of our team. As for why she joined our team. Wei Ling's eyes flashed with a hint of distress. Wen Wen's father was once a powerful A-level awakener, but because he offended Wang Deipen and his Shenlong society during a mission, he was cruelly treated by him. His limbs were broken and he was bedridden all year round. Now their family's livelihood falls on Wen Wen's shoulders. Fortunately, Yu takes care of her, and Wen Wen occasionally goes out with our team to search for resources, so her family can barely live. Mu Qiu looked at Su Wen, who was wearing a floral skirt. A child of this age before the apocalypse would still be in middle school, but now she was fighting zombie monsters in the ruins. Shaking her head, Mu Qiu turned to the other two children and asked. I think I can probably figure out the situation of the other two. Wei Ling looked embarrassed and explained, the situation of the other two children is also a bit special. Lin Feng's superpowers were not obtained through awakening. Mu Qiu narrowed his eyes slightly. He already knew the clues. Is it the flame demon potion? When Lin Feng arrived just now, he felt that this little devil's body was vaguely exuding an aura that was the same as his own, hot and violent. There is only one reason why he has the blood of the fire demon, and that is taking the fire demon potion that can mutate and awaken ordinary people. Wei Ling replied, Lin Feng was the first experimenter of the flame demon potion, and at the same time, he was also the only one among those experimenters to survive. The base originally wanted to quickly create a group of awakened people with fire abilities by extracting the energy of the Balrog. However, the energy of the Balrog was too violent. Ordinary people could not bear the overbearing energy and exploded to death. Only Lin Feng survived the experiment, but Lin Feng's abilities are also extremely unstable. Normally, his powers are only D level. Once he loses control, he will instantly soar to a level close to A level. It's like an unstable bomb that is so difficult to control that it gives the base a huge headache. Mu Qiu nodded and looked at the last of the three, the girl with straight black hair named Shueqianya. Since just now, I have felt a cold breath in her body. Does this have something to do with her superpower? Why do you feel like you know everything without me telling you? Wei Linger wondered why Mu-Chiu always guessed. Kenya's abilities are rather weird, and even many new awakeners are unwilling to team up with her. Her ability is to control zombies. She can control a certain number of levels of zombies through mental power, but the degree of control depends on Kenya's mental state and power level. Many emerging awakened people are worried that Kenya cannot control those crazy zombies. Failure to counterattack during the battle will be fatal, so Kenya is very marginalized among the awakened people. Hearing Wei Linger's evaluation of these three children, Mu-Chiu's lips slightly raised. It seems that these students of mine are all problem children, right? Shui Kenya's supernatural power is also a very terrifying bug ability, but it is also a double-edged sword, and there is a possibility of backlash at any time. Wei Linger stuck out her tongue and said playfully, "It depends on your ability. I believe you can definitely do this job. You have 2 months to guide them, and then there will be an ability test specifically for these children. Those who perform well will be included in the law enforcement team, and the rest will join the relatively independent search team. Compared to the precarious life of the search team, the work of the law enforcement team is much safer." After a conversation with Wei Linger, Mu-Chiu walked to the three students on the side. At this moment, Ji-Yu had just asked about the recent situation of Mu-Chiu's three students. According to Wei Linger, before Mu-Chiu took office, Ji-Yu was the temporary teacher for them. But Ji-Yu already had her own students, and it was difficult for her to spare too much attention to take care of them. Besides, the three of them were not well received among the awakened, and they would only be excluded if they trained together. Mu-Chiu came to the three of them with a smile like the warm sun on his face. "From now on, I will be your teacher, and I will guide you for 2 months of practice, but be careful, I will not let you go." Mu-Chiu is not very old, only about 5 or 6 years older than them, and with a warm smile on his face that is as kind and natural as a spring breeze, people can't help but feel the warmth of spring breeze. Lin Feng, who had not felt such warmth for a long time, subconsciously felt that the big brother in front of him was a gentle and amiable teacher. He touched the back of his head and grinned, "Don't worry, teacher, we will never let you down." Su Wen was also infected by Mu-Chiu's gentle smile and nodded heavily, "I will try my best." Among the three people, only Shui Kenya, who had a cold temperament, did not have any big reaction, but just a mosquito-like light hum. Mu-Chiu knew that this was just the nature of this girl. Years of seclusion made her not know how to communicate with others. "Yu, we actually meet here again. It's really a unique fate between the two of us." Just then, a male voice with joy came from a distance. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 114. Everyone turned around and saw a man wearing sunglasses and a bright suit with yellow and white stripes. He had a bright hairstyle and a red rose in his mouth. He looked extremely coquettish. "Chun Nan." Wei Linger suddenly spoke when she saw this man in sunglasses who was dressed like a slut. Even Mu-Chiu has seen this person. The person who appeared in front of everyone was none other than Chu Nan, one of the awakened members of the search team who appeared during the previous extermination of the heterogeneous cult in Lannan City, the playboy Chu Nan who couldn't walk when he saw a woman's legs. At this moment, Chu Nan was followed by several children of the same age as Su Wen and others, all dressed in the same bright clothes and looking arrogant. As soon as Chu Nan appeared, he first saw Ji-Yu's back and said intoxicatedly, "This must be a chance encounter created by the god of Cupid, which tightly connects our hearts." Then, he saw Wei Linger standing with Ji-Yu, and the expression on his face became even more excited. "Miss Linger, I didn't expect you to be here too, this must be..." Before she finished speaking, Wei Linger ruthlessly interrupted, "Stop. I don't want to get goosebumps again from your disgusting quotes." "Haha, Miss Linger is still so humorous. She is really becoming more charming. Chunan seemed to be unmoved by Wei Ling's straightforward insults, and still looked flattering. Why are you here? This training room has obviously been assigned to Mu Chiu's team. Ji Yu frowned, she didn't understand what Chunan meant by appearing here at this time. This place has always been used by me and my students. I didn't receive an order to move. Chunan seemed to have only noticed the presence of Mu Chiu and Su Wen at this moment, and sneered with an unkind expression. Isn't this Mr. Bing Jun from our Yuhei base? Why don't you go out to explore the ruins instead of teaching students here? Bing Jun. Mu Chiu turned to look at Wei Linger, who approached Mu Chiu and whispered. Ever since that day when you defeated the shadow with the giant sword in the void, another awakened person spread the news that you resisted Ji Yufeng's attack in Lannan City. Everyone thinks that although your supernatural energy has not reached S level, your strength has exceeded that of ordinary S level, so someone gave you the codename Bing Jun. Ho-kun. Mu Chiu rubbed her chin, then responded directly to Chunan and said calmly. This is also the first time I have seen someone who can do such a unique job as a dog licker. You. How could Chunan not hear the ridicule in Mu Chiu's mouth? He immediately became angry, looked at the three students behind Mu Chiu, and said with a smile. Is this your student? The base can really trust you to leave these useless students in your hands. What did you say? Lin Feng, the only boy among the three, heard Chunan's sarcasm and immediately couldn't sit still and looked at Chunan angrily. Even Xue Qinya, who had a cold face, looked at Chunan with gloomy eyes. Although she has a quiet personality and is not good at words, it does not mean that she has no emotions. Then Chunan pointed the finger at Mu Chiu again. What? Isn't Miss Chi-Chi with Lord Bing today? I have to say that Ms. Chi-Chi's ability is truly a powerful auxiliary that is rare in the world. That great sword of the void, Zijhen, really makes ordinary awakened people like me envious. In Chunan's view, the reason why Mu Chiu was able to defeat Shadow, who was an S-class awakener, was all due to the powerful assistance of Chi-Chi. Without the blessing of the Great Void Sword, Mu Chiu would just be a slightly talented elemental awakener. Chun Nan, this is Mu Chiu's training room, why are you talking so much? Get out of here. Wei Linger also felt uncomfortable with Chunan's cynicism and cursed impatiently. Miss Linger, you can't say that. Chunan didn't take Wei Linger's abuse to heart at all, and said with a smile. The treasures of heaven, materials, and earth can only be obtained by those who are capable, and good resources must naturally be poured into the right people. Chunan turned around and looked at the students behind him. These students of mine are all the best among the awakened ones. Even if they are placed in the entire base, they are the pride of heaven. They have huge potential. They will all be the mainstay of the base from now on, shouldering the important responsibility of protecting the base. Isn't it natural to give up resources to some useless awakened ones? Although the students under Mu Chiu are of good level, they are limited by their own abilities and cannot display their strong strength no matter how high they are. As Chunan finished speaking, several students behind him couldn't help but straighten their backs, with arrogant expressions on their faces. They showed amazing talents at a young age, and were later selected by the base's senior management to focus on training. Over a long period of time, they also developed a character of being proud of their talents. Although Chunan's attitude and tone were bad, what he said was an indisputable fact. This made the three students, who were simple by nature, at a loss for ideas. They had been excluded by the awakened ones in the base for too long, and finally had the opportunity to be promoted, but they were ridiculed by Chunan. Teacher. In panic, they subconsciously looked at Mu Chiu, who was their only support now. He. Just when the situation was deadlocked, Mu Chiu suddenly chuckled. My students are trash. Somehow, Chunan suddenly felt a chill on his back, and a chill like falling into an ice cave came over him. Mu Chiu's cold eyes flashed, and ice blue mist began to appear around him. Light blue mist attached to his body, and then an indescribable powerful wave swept around. Chunan's pupils widened instantly, and several students behind him were frightened by this amazing energy wave and retreated again and again. This energy. When the mist dissipated, Mewtwo's body was coated with a layer of gorgeous crystal blue armor. His robes fluttered behind him, and with the flying frost in the air, he stood in front of several students like a living god of war. Mewtwo raised his arm lightly, and a gorgeous ice blue rune appeared in front of Mewtwo. The next moment, Mewtwo lowered his wrist. With a swish, countless ice cones and ice shuttles shot out from the disc-shaped runes, and rushed towards Chunan and his party. Chunan's pupils were shocked, and he frantically operated his supernatural powers. Countless red roses appeared beside Chunan. Then the petals quickly dismembered and withered, forming several red shields surrounded by petals in front of Chunan. This petal shield formed by his supernatural power seemed vulnerable, but Chunan knew that a single shield was enough to withstand bullets and artillery. Now several shields are linked together, and even a full-strength attack from an A-level awakener can't break it. But the fact surprised everyone. The ice cubes in the sky hit the petal shield like a river pouring down. The huge shield as high as a person couldn't withstand such a strong impact and collapsed in an instant. Layer after layer of red shields composed of petals were broken, and Chunan was beaten back by the fierce attack. When the last shield was penetrated, several huge ice blocks directly blasted Chunan several meters away and hit the metal wall in the distance. The deep marks reflected the fierceness of the impact, and even Chunan's body was covered with scratches from the ice shuttle. Chunan looked at Mewtwo in shock. What really shocked him was not the ferocity of Mewtwo's attack, but the powerful energy fluctuations that Mewtwo emitted at the beginning. Even an A-level awakener like him felt particularly frightened by that fluctuation. This amazing energy fluctuation reached S level. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 115. S level, how could you be S level? Chunan fell to the ground, pointing at Mewtwo with a look of horror in his eyes. He never expected that Mewtwo, who was originally thought to have defeated Shadow with the powerful auxiliary ability of Yuichi, had already evolved to the S level. So handsome. Behind Mewtwo stood his three students, looking at the domineering man in front of him wearing crystal blue armor and surrounded by flying frost. A feeling of admiration and envy arose spontaneously in their hearts. This is the teacher who will guide them. Behind him, Wei Linger and Jiyu were also quite surprised by Mewtwo's powerful strength. Chunan was not weak even among the A-level awakeners, but now he was defeated by Mewtwo with one blow, which really scared them. Mewtwo, when did you evolve to S level? Among the crowd, the one who was most surprised by Mewtwo was Wei Linger, the original team leader. It was Wei Linger who personally brought Mewtwo back to the base. At that time, Mewtwo was only at the B level, and at best he showed amazing talent and potential. It was not until the battle in Lannan City that she discovered that Mewtwo had evolved into an A-level awakener without knowing when, and now he has grown rapidly to the S level like a rocket. Hearing Wei Linger's slightly shocked words, Mewtwo turned around and smiled lightly. Just 2 days ago, I absorbed the crystal cores collected in Lannan City, and after waking up, I inexplicably reached the S level. Mewtwo himself felt that this explanation was too ridiculous. In fact, after he absorbed the Flame Demon Crystal Core, the remaining energy directly upgraded the ice power to a higher level through the conversion of the devouring power. I don't believe you. Wei Linger certainly wouldn't naively believe Mewtwo's words, but everyone has their own secrets. Since Mewtwo didn't want to talk about it, she wouldn't go into it. Mewtwo looked at Chunan who was lying on the side. At this moment, Chunan's body was covered with blood marks from being scratched by the ice shuttle, and his body was directly injured by the impact of ice. Seeing Mewtwo walking slowly, the powerful S-level wave hit him, and he was so scared that he used all his limbs to retreat repeatedly. Before, he always thought that the reason why Mewtwo had the power to defeat the S level was just through the ability of Yuichi, but now Mewtwo's own strength has also broken through to the S level. How could he not be frightened? Chunan knew very well in his heart that this seemingly gentle man was really a cold-blooded demon who dared to kill people in public. But as Mewtwo approached, the crystal blue armor covering his body also turned into light blue mist and slowly dissipated. He walked in front of Chunan and squatted slightly. Behind him were several students who were scared of Chunan and sat on the ground. Mewtwo raised the corners of his mouth and glanced at these children with a gentle look. The latter had tears in the corners of his eyes and was about to cry. Mewtwo looked at Chunan again, and Chunan immediately brought out his backer. Mewtwo, my father is the director of the exchange office, and John Kingwei is behind him. This is an old routine, but it is often this routine that is most practical when facing a desperate situation. But this time, before Chunan finished speaking, a creepy feeling surged in his heart, directly blocking his unfinished words. SHH. Mewtwo put his index finger in front of his lips, showing a devilish smile in Chunan's eyes. You reminded me, why don't we make an interesting bet dash? In 2 months, I will let my students compete with your students. If your students win, I will let you go. If your students lose, then how about I take your life as well? When Mewtwo said this, the corners of his mouth curled up and his eyes narrowed slightly, looking like he was reminiscing with an old friend he hadn't seen for a long time. Chunan's life was of no importance to Mewtwo, and making this bet was just a temporary idea of Mewtwo's interest. Chunan was not a fool, and Mewtwo must have had his backing for saying so, so he subconsciously refused. But Mewtwo's smiling face made him unable to muster the courage to refuse, and he didn't even have the strength to speak. He had a hunch that once he refused, the first thing he would see in the next second would be his headless corpse. Mewtwo stood up, no longer looking at Chunan, and turned to walk towards Su Wen and the others. Walking in front of the few people, Mewtwo smiled and said, "See you at the stadium upstairs at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning." The 3 nodded, especially Lin Feng, who had a look of longing in his eyes. He could also control the elements, and he was already a little impatient to learn Mewtwo's domineering elemental armor. Mewtwo turned around and waved to Wei Ling and Jiu, "It's almost time, I should go back to prepare dinner, see you later." Looking at Mewtwo's elegant back, everyone's eyes were inexplicable. Jiu turned to look at Wei Ling. Do you know the origin of Mewtwo's title of Ice King? Wei Ling nodded, and said meaningfully, "He acts as he pleases, unconventional, and is not bound by his gentle appearance. He is like the only ray of sunshine in the ice river, and the king who looks down on the world in the extremely cold land." The news that Mewtwo evolved into an S-level awakener spread quickly throughout the Yuhei base overnight. This also made many survivors completely confirm the title of Ice King for Mewtwo. But one thing is beyond doubt, Yuhei base has added another S-level awakener. In the familiar high-rise building of Yuhei Center, Wei Ying told Xiao Hanyan everything that happened at the training base today. But when Xiao Hanyan heard the news, the solemn expression on her face did not dissipate for a long time. After Wei Ying noticed that Xiao Hanyan was not right, he couldn't help but ask. "Mewtwo is our man, with great potential. Now he has become an S-level awakener, adding another high-level combat force to Yuhei. This should be a happy thing. Why is the major frowning?" Xiao Hanyan frowned slightly and did not reply immediately. After a while, she asked a question. "Mewtwo has just been at the base for a few months, right?" Wei Ying was stunned at first, and then nodded. In fact, Mewtwo spent most of his time exploring the ruins after arriving at the base. I remember that when he first came here, he was only at the B level, but now he has grown to the S level. Xiao Hanyan sighed lightly. Mewtwo's growth rate was not just fast, but too fast. He was rising rapidly like a rocket. She couldn't help but be suspicious of Miuchiu. But Miuchiu hadn't had any problems so far. If someone really had problems, he shouldn't show his strength so early and attract attention. The Ice Queen of Yuhei Base looked out the window. For the first time, she lost her mind because of a man. I hope you won't let me down, Miuchiu. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 116. In an underground bar somewhere in Yuhei, Wang Deipen also learned the news that Miuchiu had evolved to S level. That kid Miuchiu actually rose to S level. Wang Deipen drank the wine bottle in his hand, threw it aside, and lay down on the animal skin sofa behind him. Surrounded by several men dressed as gangsters, they all looked shocked and looked at each other. They are also awakened ones with supernatural powers. As Wang Deipen's elites, most of them are A level and B level. No one understands the difficulty of upgrading better than them. Absorbing crystal nuclei and stimulating the body's potential through extensive practice can increase the intensity of supernatural energy. Awakens like them, who are backed by organizational forces, are better off. They are supplied with crystal cores on a regular basis, and they can also exchange for some equipment with the assigned merit points. But those awakened ones in the temporarily formed search team are much more uncomfortable. Fighting precariously in the ruins of the city, the crystal cores that can be obtained are only a few, and they have to be deducted by the team. If you want to improve your strength, you can. It's even more distant. This is also the reason why so many awakened people are eager to join the law enforcement team. The resources are abundant and the risk to their lives will also be greatly reduced. But this Miuchiu had just joined the base for less than a month. How did he soar from a B-level awakener to an S-level one? This shocked everyone's eyes. It takes a few years for ordinary people to advance to the first level. Even if Miuchiu is extremely talented in the elemental system, he wouldn't be able to advance like this on a rocket, right? Zhen, this Miuchiu must have a big secret. I have never seen an awakened person whose powers soar so quickly. Wang Deipen hooked his arms on the animal skin sofa, a look of greed flashed across his face. Whether it was the girl beside Miuchiu who could greatly increase her power, or Miuchiu's secret that could quickly increase the level of supernatural energy, Wang Deipen was particularly interested in these. As for Miuchiu now becoming an S-level awakener, Wang Deipen could not care at all. In the face of destructive level power, S-level is just a matter of taking a few more beatings. Even Yanjai Shura King Deipen, who seemed to be on par with him in terms of momentum that day, didn't pay much attention to it. He believed that if the fight continued, that Shura would be burned to dregs by his Yang Yan within a few minutes. Xiao Hanyan is determined to keep that kid, but, can she really guarantee that Miuchiu will stay in the base for the rest of his life? A joking smile appeared on Wang Deipen's face. Ever since he got this fire power, he has never missed anything he has set his sights on. Whether it's the secret of Miuchiu's explosive power or Xiao Hanyan, the Queen of the Jade Sea, they are all things he must get. In that case, let's start with the secrets about him. Bone Dragon, you can find a chance to test this kid. I want to see how many people dare to offend our Shenlong society. A few tales. Wang Deipen grinned and turned to look at the corner of the bar front desk. There, sitting there was a thin figure, as skinny as a stick. At first glance, he looked like a withered skeleton. Don't worry, boss, I won't make the same mistake that good-for-nothing Shadow made again. In the darkness, the skeletal figure suddenly spoke, and his voice was intermittent and hoarse. Jaja. Bing Jun's power? I also want to see it. In the shadows of a high-rise somewhere in the base, a purple-robed figure was standing in the silent space, and a curtain of light suddenly flashed in front of him. The light curtain first flashed with electromagnetic ripples, and then a mysterious figure in a red robe and hood appeared. The purple-robed man stood opposite the red-robed figure in the light curtain. Have the senior officials of Yuhei organization of Yanjai who suddenly appeared found anything? The man in red had a low voice, but it carried an inexplicable majesty. The purple-robed man lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, Yuhei base is still doing its best to search for news about Yanjai's forces. There are no clues yet. The target of the Yanjai organization's attack is Yuhei's experimental building and research base. So what we want? The man in red robe got to the point in one sentence. The Balrog crystal core and the potions related to it are lost. After the man in purple robe said this, the person on the other side fell into silence for a while, and then said, the Balrog's crystal core is the only special existence that can purify energy alone. This means that ordinary people also have the possibility of awakening into superpowers. The ability to create awakened people in batches must be obtained by our heterogeneous section. The low voice said this with absolute determination, indicating his determination to win the Flame Demon Crystal Core. Since there is no way to deal with the Yanjai organization, there is still an experimental product of the Flame Demon Potion in the Yuhei base, right? The man in red robe was thinking quickly, and his thoughts were immediately focused on Lin Feng. Now Yuhei is preparing to train the experimenters of the Flame Demon bloodline. The teacher is Yuhei's newly promoted S-class awakened person, Lord Bing. Bing Jun. Have you ever had contact with that Bing Jun? The man in purple robe said and said hoarsely. When he first came to the base, his level was only B level, but after returning to Lannan City, he became extremely powerful. He defeated Wang Daipen's shadow not long ago, and now he has shown S-level strength. The red-robed man's voice fell silent again for a moment, then asked, is it possible that this Ice Lord is related to the mysterious non-eternal night organization? That remains to be seen. Looking for an opportunity to explore the secrets of this Ice King, I believe it will not be difficult with your ability, right? The man in purple robe paused and said hoarsely, yes. Haha, it seems that Yuhei can't sit still anymore. I'm really looking forward to it, that self-deceptive redemption plan. The voice of the man in red was intermittent under the transmission of radio waves, and even his figure gradually became blurred with the light curtain. Finally, the light curtain completely dissipated, leaving only the independent figure of the purple-robed man in the darkness. The moonlight shines through the window on the face of the man in purple robe under the brim of his hat, and his wrinkled chin is revealed. Muchu. The hoarse voice echoed in this empty darkness and never dissipated for a long time. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, Mo Xianyu. Chapter 117. I'm back. Su Wen, wearing a floral short skirt, happily pushed open the door of the room, with a look of joy on her face. Although the house of dozens of square meters is old, it is clean and tidy. Some furniture is wiped spotless, giving people a warm feeling. You can tell at a glance that it is often cleaned. This kind of room is extremely rare in the end of the world. Wenwen is back, just in time for dinner. A middle-aged woman in her 30s or 40s walked out of the kitchen, wearing an apron and holding pots in her hands. She was also happy when she saw Su Wen coming back. In the corner of the house, there was a big bed, on which a middle-aged man with a strong body but broken limbs was paralyzed, staring at the direction of the ceiling with lifeless eyes. Even the expression on his daughter's face when she came home did not show any emotion. Except for this dull-eyed man, everything in the house was very natural, and Su Wen seemed to be a middle school student who had just returned home from school before the end of the world. The first thing Su Wen did after returning home was not to sit at the table and eat hot meals. Instead, she excitedly took out several crystal cores of different colors from her waist pocket and put them in the woman's hand. I just brought back the crystal cores I got from this exploration. I believe Dad will get better soon. Su Wen stood on tiptoe, with a high-spirited expression on her face, looking full of energy and vitality. It is said that a few hundred kilometers away from Yuhei Base, there is a high-tech base called Zilan Base, where the medical technology and technological level are much higher than Yuhei Base. It is rumored that there is also medical technology for reshaping limbs. The reason why Su Wen worked so hard to join the search team to earn crystal cores was, on the one hand, to support her family, and another reason was that she hoped to rely on the high-tech of Zilan Base to regenerate her father's broken limbs. The woman took the crystal core, but she didn't show any joy at first. Instead, she rubbed Su Wen's head with distress in her eyes. "Wen Wen, you've worked hard." She knew that Wen Wen was doing her best to maintain the family and keep the warm atmosphere before the end of the world. She also knew that her daughter was not as strong as she seemed on the surface, and she didn't know how much pain and grievance she had suffered behind the scenes. But, in this cruel end of the world, can their family of three really be as warm and happy as before? The woman turned her head to look at her husband, who was lying on the side, his eyes empty like a walking corpse, and her face was filled with worry. "I'm back." Lin Feng excitedly kicked the wooden door in front of him, and the force was so great that it even made the wooden door click. But what he saw was a dark and silent room. No sound came out, only the door behind him was still making a click sound. Lin Feng walked into the house, threw his backpack on the sofa as usual, and lit a candle on the table. The house where Lin Feng lived was located in the old town of Yuhei, far away from the central area of Yuhei. The power supply area after the outbreak of the apocalypse obviously did not include here. The fiery red candlelight illuminated Lin Feng's slightly immature face, but made the surroundings of the room even darker. Bored, Lin Feng took out a comic magazine from his backpack, and then lay on the sofa to read it seriously in the dim candlelight. After a while, there was a light knock on the door. Lin Feng jumped up from the sofa excitedly, ran to the front door and pulled the handle violently. But the wooden door was pushed hard from the outside, leaving a gap. Through the half-open door, only the old face of an old woman outside the door could be vaguely seen. "Grandma Li, I..." Lin Feng wanted to speak more, but was directly drowned out by the trembling voice of the old woman. Xiao Feng, I brought you dinner today. If you have nothing else, I'll leave first." Before Lin Feng could answer, there was a rustling and hurried sound of footsteps coming from the door in front of him. Perhaps sensing Lin Feng's loss, the old woman who had not walked far away suddenly stopped and sighed. "Xiao Feng, we have been neighbors for more than 10 years. Don't blame Grandma Li for being ruthless. It's mainly because you look so scary when you go crazy. Alas, you should move out as soon as possible." The footsteps behind the door gradually faded away until they were completely dead. The wooden door made a click sound again, and the next second, the door closed. Lin Feng leaned against the door dejectedly, and 2 lines of tears slid down the boy's face. The candle on the table went out at some point, and the whole room fell into silence again. At dusk, the dim light covered the sky until the outline of the sun completely disappeared from the horizon. At the foot of the mountain behind the Yuhei base, a low-rise villa stood quietly. This place is located in the suburbs of Yuhei, sparsely populated, and almost no one chooses to live here. Not only is the safety of the edge of the Yuhei base difficult to guarantee, but the empty and weird atmosphere at night is also unbearable. Just on the small road near the villa at the foot of the mountain, a petite and cold figure was walking slowly. The long, smooth black hair fell to her waist, and the girl exuded a cold breath that kept strangers away, just like the gentian flowers that withered and silent by the pond, rolling up waves. This girl with long black hair and a cold aura is Shueqianya, one of Mu Chiu's 3 students. Shueqianya walked to the front of the villa, took out the key and opened the door familiarly and walked in. The hall of the villa was still empty and dim, and the sound of the girl's footsteps sounded, which brought a little more life to the empty room. The first thing Shueqianya did after entering the villa was to go to the entrance of the basement on the first floor. In the dim and gloomy basement, there was a faint roar of zombies. Shwekinya lit the candles on the wall, and the bright candlelight lit up the dim basement, and also reflected the two hideous and horrible twisted corpses on the wall. On the wall not far away, there were two zombies, a man and a woman, tied up with iron chains. The zombies with hideous faces were hung on the wall with chains, their clothes were stained with blood, their limbs showed a strange and twisted deformity, and their white eyes revealed a bloodthirsty murderous intent. Seeing these two hideous zombie monsters, Shwekinya didn't show any fear on her face. Instead, she walked forward calmly, and a cold voice came out from her cherry li sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 118. In the early morning, Miuchiu arrived at the place agreed with the three students early. Speaking of which, this was Miuchiu's first time as a teacher, and anything he had never experienced before would make Miuchiu interesting. After all, in a sense, his life is too long, and it will be very boring if he doesn't find some fun for himself. There are only a few people in the stadium that has been transformed beyond recognition, and only a few figures are still moving. Compared with empty stadiums, most awakened people will choose to go to the newly built high-tech training base with complete equipment underground, where they can often help emerging awakened people become proficient in supernatural powers more quickly and effectively. In the stands at the edge of the stadium, a girl with a cold temperament wearing a purple shirt is sitting there, holding a book in her hand and lowering her head to read. If you ignore the cold temperament exuding from her body that should be kept away from strangers, she looks more like a book. A lady from a scholarly family. Standing next to Shwekinya was Su Wen, who was wearing a floral skirt. On her shoulder stood a cute squirrel the size of a palm, looking as cute as the girl next door. At this moment, Su Wen was stroking the hem of her skirt and standing next to Shwekinya, lowering her head from time to chat with her. Speaking of which, the two are obviously about the same age, but Shwekinya always gives people the feeling of a mature big sister. Both her temperament and behavior are different from those of girls of this age. Su Wen, who is the same age, is like a good girl in front of her. With the breeze blowing on her face, Shwekinya reached out and brushed the hair beside her ears, and happened to see Miuchiu walking from a distance. Shwekinya closed the book, walked towards Miuchiu from the stands, bowed slightly, "Teacher." Su Wen also followed closely at this time. Su Wen, who was familiar with Miuchiu, the eldest brother in the team, was not so restrained. With a look of joy on his face, he smiled sweetly and said, "Hello, teacher." Miuchiu smiled and nodded in response. However, Miuchiu did not notice the figure of the last of the three students, Linfeng, in the surrounding area. Tianlai Novel Network. Miuchiu turned to ask, "With your ability Wenwen, even without these systematic training, it should be more than enough to join the search team. Why do you still need to receive guidance here?" It stands to reason that although Su Wen's powers do not have strong destructive power, they are bug-like in exploring intelligence, predicting dangers, and even some special emergencies. Even if such an awakened person is not tested, there will be countless search teams vying for it, and it is not a problem to even join the law enforcement team. Hearing Miuchiu's doubts, Su Wen stuck out her tongue and said playfully, "Strictly speaking, the base does not allow awakened persons who have not undergone systematic training to explore the ruins. When encountering danger, it is difficult to guarantee your own safety, not to mention it is easy to drag down your companions around you. I begged Sister Linger to temporarily join the team and help explore information in exchange for some crystal nuclei." After saying this, Su Wen raised her head slightly and took a cautious glance at Miuchiu. She knew that many teachers would not like disobedient students. But Miuchiu narrowed her eyes, rubbed Su Wen's little head, and said with a smile, "Wenwen is really capable. She has shouldered so much at such a young age." Hearing Miuchiu's encouraging words, Su Wen relaxed and smiled on her face. At this moment, A hearty laughter of a young man suddenly came to the ears of several people. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I wasted some time just now because I was helping an old lady cross the road." I saw a young man with red hair and a short shirt walking from a short distance away, stroking the back of his head with a silly smile. After what happened yesterday, in Lin Feng's opinion, his teacher should be the kind of good teacher who is gentle to his students and extremely protective of his shortcomings outside, so it doesn't matter if he is late for a while. Mu Qiu looked at the time, and it was already a quarter of an hour later than the time they originally agreed. Mu Qiu squinted her eyes slightly and walked towards Lin Feng with a warm smile. Being late is not what a good student should do. Mu Qiu raised her hand and rubbed the young man's slightly messy hair, and a flash of ice flashed across his eyes. Suddenly, Lin Feng felt a chill running down his spine, as if he was being targeted by some peerless beast. Ice blue frost mist hit Lin Feng's head, and a chill that seemed to come from the polar regions enveloped Lin Feng's body. In an instant, a red light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes, which continued to enlarge from the center of his pupils. It was hot and domineering, and it seemed as if something was about to erupt in the next second. But suddenly, the energy in the body that was about to explode like a dam bursting seemed to have encountered some extremely terrifying existence, and disappeared in an instant like a misfired smoke cannon. The red light in his eyes disappeared, but then Lin Feng felt an extreme coldness. Even his thoughts became numb in an instant, and his entire body was frozen into ice in an instant. Mu Qiu retracted his palm, and he had already sensed that the red flame energy contained in Lin Feng's body came from the fire demon lord. However, the bloodline in it is too mixed, with the energy of the Balrog that has not been upgraded before, and it seems that some bloodlines of the mutation system are also integrated into it. This level of energy is no longer worth absorbing, but in the final analysis, this power comes from the flame demon in his body. Whether it is valuable or not depends on Lin Feng's subsequent performance. After all, the power of the flame demon is not so easy to obtain. If Lin Feng does not show his value, Mu Qiu does not mind taking back his power. You have to grow up quickly. Mu Qiu raised his lips and said something meaningful that no one could understand. Mu Qiu flicked his fingers and instantly shattered the ice that Lin Feng had frozen. Lin Feng was still emitting cold air, sneezing, shivering with his shoulders, and looking at Mu Qiu with fear in his eyes. He now understood that the man in front of him with a gentle look and a smiling face was actually a dark devil with a dark heart. Mu Qiu's eyes moved away from Lin Feng and smiled at the three people. Since everyone is here, it's time to start our training. He then turned and walked in a certain direction. The three stood there and looked at each other, because the direction Mu Qiu was walking in was opposite to the entrance of the underground training base. Seeing that Mu Qiu's pace was getting faster and faster and he was about to walk out of the training ground, Su Wen took the lead to follow, while Shueqianya and Lin Feng followed closely behind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 119. Teacher, this. Lin Feng and the others looked blankly at Mu Qiu, who stopped in the open space in front of them. At this moment, a quarter of an hour has passed since they gathered. And they followed Mu Qiu from the training ground to an open space on the outskirts of Yuhe. Are we going to train here? Looking at the empty flat land with only a few weeds and sparsely populated areas in front of them, the three of them were really confused. No matter how you look at it, training with professional equipment in an underground high-tech base is more effective, right? Put them in an open space and ask them to run a 100-meter race? Only Lin Feng hugged his arms and looked at Mu Qiu warily. The experience just now has greatly changed this innocent child's impression of Mu Qiu, from the initially gentle teacher to a sinister and dark demon. His intuition told him that the training ahead would not be simple. Mu Qiu looked up first, then nodded to the three of them and said, Yes, it's right here. Before the three of them could react, they only felt the cold air lingering under their feet, and a cloud of ice mist swept around them in an instant. Immediately, the icy blue mist condensed into a huge ice ball, covering Lin Feng and the others. Amidst a burst of exclamations, the huge ice ball soared into the sky and floated directly in the sky. What surprised a few people even more was that a pair of transparent ice wings as thin as cicada wings and crystal blue formed on Mu Chiu's back in front of them. The flakes of blue feathers are crystal clear, and the lines between the wings are vividly carved, like the most exquisite works of art in the world. Mu Chiu's feet flew into the air, and a pair of wide ice wings fluttered. As Mu Chiu raised her arms, the huge ice ball surrounding the three people also floated. The wind roared in the airs, mixed with the cold air from the ice ball, blowing on the three people's cheeks, but it could not extinguish the shock on the three people's faces. Just like that, ice wings sprouted from Mu Chiu's back, and a huge floating ice ball wrapped around three figures followed closely behind, flying directly over the Yuhei base. Mu Chiu had gone out to hunt many times before, and that was when she first gained the ability. But this time, Mu Chiu suddenly noticed that the sky above the entire Jade Sea was enveloped by an invisible layer of mental fluctuations. Just like a huge upside-down bowl, any disturbance in or out of the base cannot escape the detection of this mental wave. Similar abilities have been seen in the members of the law enforcement team under Ji Yufeng before, but the spiritual energy that enveloped the entire Yuhei base was much greater than the last time in Lannan City. Destruction level. Mu Chiu flew in mid-air, her eyes slightly narrowed. It seems that after the invasion of the Yanjai organization, the Yuhei base has also turned on alert mode. The spiritual shield in front of them is clearly the work of a destructive level powerhouse. But this is naturally not difficult for Mu Chiu. Although the spiritual energy he possesses has not reached the level of destruction, it is still easy to deceive this barrier for a moment. The transparent mental tentacles tore a gap in the mental shield, and the next moment, the ability to fly at supersonic speed was activated. Lin Feng and the other three felt their eyes go dark. When they opened their eyes, they found that the outline of the base had already been left behind. In the blink of an eye, the huge survivor base turned into a small black dot in their eyes. In a city dozens of kilometers away from the Yuhei base, several hungry zombies on the streets were looking for prey with ferocious faces and waving limbs. Suddenly, an ice-blue cold light shot out from the sky, and several low-level zombies were instantly frozen into ice. The ice wings flapped, and Mu Chiu slowly descended from the sky, and the huge ice ball surrounding the three students also landed. As Mu Chiu's toes touched the ground, the ice wings behind her turned into ice mist and dissipated. The three students walked out of the ice ball with expressions of wonder on their faces, but the first thing they felt was the smell of decay and old blood in the air. This is the urban ruins outside. Among the three, Su Wen, who had the most experience outside, immediately noticed something was wrong. Isn't the location they were in at this moment an urban wasteland full of zombies and dangers? Yes, this is our training place today. Mu Chiu looked at the three students with a signature smile on her face. Here. No, it won't be. Lin Feng suddenly felt a bad feeling in his heart. Your mission today is to survive in the ruins of the city for a full day. Mu Chiu bent down slightly and shook her fingers at the three of them, with a playful smile on her lips. According to the division of Yuhei base, this area is located at the junction of the yellow zone and the green zone. The strength of zombie monsters is generally relatively low, which is suitable for the three students to play. He won't teach you how to use superpowers. All skills are learned through the killings of life and death. Stop making trouble. How can you survive in a city full of monsters like this? Lin Feng swallowed, with disbelief in his pupils. He never thought that this was how Mu Chiu guided them. But before Lin Feng could refuse, Mu Chiu's next move directly shocked the three of them. I saw Mu Chiu taking out a whistle from her arms at some point, taking a slight breath, and blew it violently against her lips. Beep. A clear whistle sounded in the ears of the three people, and then it echoed around as if it had been loudly megaphoned. The originally quiet city was instantly filled with a clear whistle. Roar! Countless zombie monsters sleeping in the surroundings heard the sound and rushed towards the direction of the few people like hungry wolves. The dark tide of corpses swept in from all directions like waves, and the few of them were like fish on a chopping board with nowhere to escape. This. Lin Feng's eyes widened, watching Mu Qiu attract a large group of zombies, and the former tried to look at their teacher for help. But the instigator of all this, Mu Qiu smiled at the few people. Then I wish you good luck. See you later. Mu Qiu raised his hand and saluted, and a pair of ice wings condensed behind him again, flying up in the wind and waves, ruthlessly abandoning the three students on the ground. Lin Feng turned around and looked at his two companions with an uncertain look in his eyes. The teacher won't abandon us like this. Right. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 120. The overwhelming horror zombies attacked Lin Feng and the other two, waving their black nails in an attempt to tear the prey in front of them into pieces. Fortunately, the zombies in this area were generally not of high level, and the zombies attacking them were all ordinary low-level zombies. Lin Feng was frightened and his face turned pale, his throat rolling up and down. When had he ever faced such a big battle before? Su Wen and Xue Qianya beside him were in a much better situation. Although they looked a little panicked, they were finally able to calm down. Su Wen had experienced several big scenes after all. She patted the palm-sized brown squirrel on her shoulder and whispered, "Kuakuo, it's up to you." The brown squirrel seemed to understand and climbed down from Su Wen's shoulder humanely. After landing on the ground, its pupils suddenly turned red, and then its body size increased steadily, and finally expanded to the size of a car. The majestic muscle lines could not be concealed even under the brown hair, and a wild and fierce momentum emanated from this giant beast. The giant-like violent squirrel had red eyes and rushed directly towards the zombies rushing towards it. The irrational zombies did not know how to dodge, and were crushed and trampled by the huge and unparalleled power of the mutant squirrel in an instant, and blood flew. Mau mau. At the same time, a sharp cry passed through the sky, and a petite sparrow glided from the air, but as its body continued to press down, its body also expanded inch by inch. When it was close to the ground, it had grown into a sharp-clawed wild goose, and the energy radiated from its body had a faint posture of breaking through the B-level. The car-sized violent squirrel on the ground was rampaging, and the mutant wild goose in the sky waved its sharp claws to attack the zombies around it, and for a while it actually slowed down the pace of some zombies. Xue Qianya, who was standing next to Su Wen, also moved at this time. The cold girl's eyes first closed gently, and a strange energy wave slowly brewed around her body. The next second, the eyes that suddenly opened were already covered with a strange purple. At the moment when the purple eyes opened, the dead silence emanating from Xue Qianya also climbed to the peak in an instant. When she raised her hand, a spiritual wave with an extremely cold breath rushed forward. Several mutant zombies who were the first to be affected were the first to be affected. They were attacked by the spiritual wave released by Xue Qianya. The originally white eyeballs instantly became black and empty. The diving figure stagnated, and the hideous face solidified. The next moment, these mutant zombies with good strength turned around and attacked their companions around them crazily. Interesting. On top of a tall building surrounded by zombies, Mu Qiu was smiling and enjoying the wonderful performance of the disciples below. Just when Xue Qianya activated her ability, Mu Qiu actually felt the weak pull from that spiritual power. Of course, Xue Qianya's ability alone cannot control him, the zombie king. After all, in a sense, he, who has integrated so many powers from other planes, has long ceased to belong to the category of zombies. He is more like a higher level life form that is different from zombie humans. Shwekinya's ability to control corpses is naturally an extremely rare and powerful ability, but this is also relative. Some spiritual methods that have evolved to the extreme can also temporarily control these irrational zombies. Even the heterogeneous sect seems to have the ability to control zombies. It's a pity that the scientific research level of Yuhei base is far from reaching the level involving spirit, otherwise Shwekinya would definitely be caught to conduct an in-depth analysis of her ability. So although Shwekinya's ability to control corpses is powerful, it is far from the point where Yuhei base can devote all its efforts to cultivating it. Looking back at Su Wen's side, the ability to listen to everything has indeed brought her many conveniences, and it will also play some unexpected roles at some special critical moments. But as Su Wen's ability level increases, the disadvantages of this ability will gradually be exposed. First of all, the improvement of her ability is closely related to the life forms that communicate with her, just like the mutant squirrel that slaughters zombies on the ground. At this time, its level is relatively low, and it can still maintain a certain degree of rationality, but as its level increases, it will become increasingly unable to control the violence and murderous intent in its heart. At that time, it will be even more difficult for Su Wen to control it through communication. Speaking of which, there are some differences between zombies mutated after humans are infected with the virus and heretics mutated after animals are infected. The biggest difference is that animals can still have some rational existence, while zombies have all their rationality wiped out and become bloodthirsty monsters full of killing. Could it be because humans are too smart? Thinking of this, Mu Qiu smiled slightly and turned his attention to Lin Feng, who inherited the blood of the flame demon among the three students. In a sense, Lin Feng, who took the flame demon potion, does not belong to the category of humans. Lin Feng watched his two companions fighting the zombies fearlessly, and a surge of blood rushed to his head. Lin Feng roared, and two balls of yellow flames appeared on his fists. He waved his fists and rushed towards the ordinary zombies in front of him without any rules. Mu Qiu sensed it slightly, and with the flames emerging from his hands, Lin Feng barely reached the sea level. He smiled and shook his head. These means alone were not enough to deal with such a large number of zombies. However, all this had nothing to do with him. Originally, he was just in the mood to be a teacher. Mu Qiu was not interested in being a full-time babysitter for these children. Then I should do something next. Mu Qiu stretched his body, his slender waist straightened, and his body flew away. This time, there were no wings behind him. At the junction of the red zone and the black zone of the city, low-level ordinary zombies are extremely rare here, and the lowest-level cannon fodder zombies also have sea-level existence. This is the result of continuous fighting and evolution in the city. Countless terrifying and huge heretic monsters move and shuttle on the ground and in the air. They are the real masters of this world. The roars and screams of various unknown existences echoed in the space. This is a real forbidden area for humans. Among them, the huge zombies were even 2 stories high. As they walked, they stepped on the thick ground and made holes. The powerful supernatural fluctuations even caused the surrounding walls and rubble to splash. At this moment, several black shadows flashed on the ground, gradually rising upwards, condensing into the appearance of black ninjas. Several ninjas threw down the huge zombies, and blood splattered in an instant. A few breaths of time passed, and a huge black shadow with the same shape as the zombie just now slowly emerged on the ground. Let's start, the hunting time of the eternal night. Mu Qiu's figure in a black robe appeared from the top floor, and a flash of red flashed in his eyes. At his feet, there was a group of dark shadows as dark as ink, with waves surging in it, as if brewing some terrible existence. At the same time, the same body and terrifying number of black-clothed ninjas began to appear everywhere in this area.